Hi friends, it's Becky, and today I want to do some 2-hole bead bracelets. And I want to do them using some 2-hole beads, and we'll use a variety of 2-hole beads and beading wire. And I wanted to do something a little bit different from your typical one where you've got your 2-hole beads and then you put each end of 2 wires through that 2-hole bead in each of the holes. Which way am I going on this? I want to make sure that they are the same. So you put both ends of the wire through there, and then you put a single hole bead between each of them and just kind of stack them along. It can be really quick, really easy, and pretty effective to do a bracelet or to do some beading with 2-hole beads like that. And I will never get tired of it, but you just keep repeating that. And boom, you have a bracelet. So one of the things that I wanted to do today with y'all is, instead of making a 2-hole bead bracelet like this, where you just have the 2 strands of wire going through the 2-hole bead, a single 2-hole bead, and then through 2 1-hole beads, which is fantastic. And like I said, I never get tired of it. I want to make something a little bit different, a little bit extra. Today, I wanted to use some 2-hole beads and then some other 2-hole beads and add some beads onto that to make a bracelet that is a little more complicated, but it's still going to be fairly simple. You still just have the 2 wires going one direction, and then we'll have 2 wires coming back the other direction. We're just going to be having some larger 2-hole beads and some smaller 2-hole beads, and then we're going to fill in some space in between on each of those. And so we're going to have ourselves a little bracelet bash. And if you're new to what my little bracelet bashes are, it's where I take a design or concept and I make some bracelets with maybe some of my current or recent bead boxes. And I use different beads for it, but it's the same design concept. And the reason I like to do that is just to give you permission to, if you're looking at my tutorial, and watching it, to not stop yourself from making something just because you don't have what I'm making it with. You can look through your stash and find some 2-hole beads that maybe you didn't know what to do with. This was completely from my stash. I had some Tila beads and I just grabbed a couple of these colors, put them in rainbow order, and then grabbed some of these cube beads for the side. And my second 2-hole bead were just these black half Tilas, and it works really well. But they didn't come together. They weren't in a kit. They were just things that I had, and I was like, you know what? I bet I can put these together and they'll look amazing. And I'm gonna be honest with you, they do. I'm really happy with this bracelet. But this is an example that I'm gonna be wearing and referring to as we go through this. Let's get this on here. But it's pretty fun. But what we're going to be doing today is I want to use some of the dollar bead box and bag items. That's what I've got listed out here from the March dollar bead bag. It was all these beautiful purples and things like that. We had 2 different types of 2-hole beads that came in that box. We have these big, like, starbursty guys, which are weird and funky, and then we've got these like half moon or half circle, semicircle 2-hole beads like that. They're a little more crescenty, and so we're going to be using those in one of our designs. And then I've got some beads from my curated collections. We've got some 2-hole pyramid or stud beads that we're going to be using, and then the second 2-hole bead that I want to use are these Rilla beads. So basically the formula is going to be kind of a larger 2-hole bead and then some smaller 2-hole beads, and the larger bead will be in the middle and the 2 smaller 2-hole beads will be on the side like that, so that we can have our sticky outy bits and fill in those spaces on our way back. Now, when I say smaller, I don't necessarily mean their footprint when they're laying flat is going to be smaller, because this is going to be my central the main one from the Soft Flex Specialty Design Kit. And these piggy beads are a little bit bigger, but when you put them next to it like that, they don't take up as much length space. So that's what I mean by smaller, is that it just doesn't take up as much length. And so we're going to be using those from the Specialty Design Kit. And then I grabbed these Super Duos from my Gemstone Orphanage box, and we're going to be using these and just these, because you don't have to use two different two-hole beads. You could do this design with the same two-hole beads, and so we're going to do that with this one as well. So that's where we're going to go with this. We're going to have ourselves some fun times. And I'm basically going to just walk you through the whole thing. Now we're going to start out. We're starting out the same way with all of these. And I've got some extra beads that I'm going to be adding in for our second pass when we go back through and fill in those spaces on the sides. My fill-in beads for the Specialty Design Kit, I originally had tried these, but they didn't fit. And that's the fun part about this kind of design, is kind of figuring out what will fit in those empty spaces. So I'll talk you through how to tell if it fits or not, and how to adjust and make decisions with the beads that you are putting on the sides to make it fit. So if you're using beads that are different from mine, you can still make this design and you can still make it fit. So I was going to use these, but they don't fit right. So I grabbed some of these Rolla beads that I also got from Soft Flex, and they fit just fine. So that's what I'm going to be using for my side beads on that one. For my side beads on my Gemstone Orphanage one, I've got these gorgeous tiny microfaceted carnelian rounds. And so I'm going to be using those to go between these. And then for my Beads to Live By curated collection, I'm going to just be using some 8/0s and 6/0s from that curated collection. And it's gonna look fun and fantastic, and I'm looking forward to that. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. It's more complicated because there's a limited amount of these larger beads. This will not be long enough just on their own for an entire bracelet. So it's just going to be the center part of my bracelet that has this, and then these guys on the alternate sides. But these also have some funky spaces between them, and I'll talk you through it when we get to this one and how it's a little bit different. So I'm going to be using some of these during the initial construction to go through this. These are 4mm fire polish beads that came in a dollar bead bag. And then to go in the sides, I'm going to be using some of these clear Drux and the 4mm fire polish bead, and some of the seed beads, these 11/0 seed beads that also came in that box. So I'm going to be using all three of those for filling in the sides. And again, I'll walk you through how I figured out how that would fit, because I tried out a bunch of different bead combinations and they didn't all work. But then on either side of this, I'm going to have just a little bit of a different design using some of these melon beads and these tulip beads that also came in that box, and some 3mm fire polish beads that came in the dollar bead bag. So when we get to this one, we'll take a little bit of extra time, but let me get the other ones started for you so that we can get those going, and then we'll do our special guy over here. But all of these are basically going to be started the same way. I'm putting the end of the closure on one end or in the middle of a solid piece of wire, and I've got it started for most of these already, and I will start the fourth one with y'all so you can see, but it's the same way that I started all of these, so I don't think you need me to repeat it. It's fairly simple, but let me show you how to measure how much wire you're going to be using, because the length of wire, it goes around your wrist 4 times. So you've got 4 strands of wire going across your wrist. When you go to measure out your wire, go ahead and grab it in your hand here. Just pinch it with your finger and then kind of extend it a little bit to give yourself some extra room for crimping and for the turnaround. And then start wrapping around your wrist. 1, 2, 3, and then 4th. And at the 4th, I like to stick my pinky out to give myself a little extra space for crimping and for the turnaround and for any other, wonkiness that's going to happen when you're making this. And that's where I'm going to cut. That's just how I measure for this type of bracelet. It's a good way to measure if you're going to be doing like a wrap bracelet or something that you want to wrap 3 times. Just having that extra bit that you're holding in your fingers here, and then you've got with your pinky. When you measure it that way, you make sure you have enough for crimping and all of these other things. Now, this is Soft Flex medium wire, and I'm going to use that with my specialty kit. I'm using some Soft Flex fine for my other ones though. So that's why I'm doing that. And one of the reasons I'm using the fine for especially this one is because there's going to be parts of my design that I'm going to be going through holes multiple times. And so the medium wire might make that a little more difficult. So I'm using this just for the Soft Flex one, but that way the small differences in the size of wire that you use, I'll be able to talk about and show you when we do that. So I'm just going to find the middle of my wire by putting the ends together and squeezing it like that. And then I can drop my closure, and I'm just using a simple toggle clasp for closure on this one. You noticed maybe that I had buttons for closures on a couple of these others, and there's just a difference in the way that you do the other end, depending on if you're going to be doing a toggle closure or buttons, or you could just do loops and a lobster clasp. It's fairly easy and flexible design for what type of closure you use. Again, use what you've got. So I've got that middle, and then what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to put a crimp on here. And because I'm using medium wire for this, and these crimp tubes can accommodate maybe 3 passes of the Soft Flex wire, but not 4. On this medium wire only, I'm going to be adding a couple of extra crimp tubes. So this first crimp tube, I'm going to slide it down and crimp this one because I'm not going to be putting any other wire in here. And as far as my tools go, I am using a magical crimper and 2x2 crimp tubes. You can use any crimps you want to use for this. I was actually playing around earlier with this one, and these crimps that you squeeze this little nubbin and it crimps it. So when I was doing this one, I actually used those crimps instead of the magical crimpers. I'm not doing that for this video though, because these crimps, they're a little bit of a struggle. You need to use some grip strength in order to squeeze them. They're very difficult to just easily squeeze closed, which I think probably ends up being a good thing for the strength of the crimp. But I want to do like a little bit more playing around with them before I do like a full review or anything for this type of crimp. But for the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and use crimps that I am familiar with, and that means I'm using my magical crimper. And for that, you just put the crimp into that concavity in the middle right there, give it a squeeze, and it squishes down the edges of your crimp bead and leaves some sharp edges on the corners. But if you open it and rotate it and open it and rotate it a few times, it smooths out all of those rough edges and leaves you with a nice smooth crimp bead. And that's why I like this, because then I don't have to mess with crimp covers. So this is the only one that's different. On these other ones, I'm leaving this uncrimped because I'm going to want to put these other strands of wire through this crimp at the end of the bracelet. when I'm done stringing everything on to actually close it. So I'm leaving this uncrimped on all of the other ones, the ones with this finer gauge wire. But with the medium wire, I am not going to be able to fit all of those through this at the end. So I'm just doing this one crimp here. And then I'm going to put a crimp tube on each strand of wire, and I'm going to leave those uncrimped so that when I come back down, after we do our first pass and then go back through to fill in our gaps, after I'm done with all of this, I can crimp the other ends of my wire here and it'll be finished. So I can do that there. So that's the only difference, is that if you're using that thicker wire, you might want to do one crimp here and then 2 crimps on each strand. But if you're using a thinner wire, 1 crimp is probably going to be enough. As long as you can fit 4 passes of your wire through that crimp, then you're going to be fine. All right, so let's get it started. I'm just going to move across and show you my pattern. I'm not going to put all of the beads on right away with y'all. I'm going to show you the pattern, and then I'm going to move on to the next one, show you the pattern there, move on to the next one, show you the pattern there, and then I will work on this on my own and come back to y'all when we get to the length that we want, and I'll show you how to turn around then. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, these guys, I've got these piggy beads, and I'm just going to be stringing on the piggy beads and the tilas, the tile beads initially. Let me get that tile up here. Okay, there we go. So what I'm going to do is go through the tile bead with both strands of my wire, one strand through each hole. And I'm going to pick up my piggy beads. And the piggy beads they've got a concave side and then a rounded side, or a domed side. And the 2 holes in them are offset from the center. So you have one hole that's in the center and another hole that's over here closer to the edge. And for this part, I'm going to be going through the hole that's closest to the edge, and I kind of want my piggy beads to be facing opposite sides from each side of my bracelet. So for this side, I'm going to go through the hole that's closest to the edge, and I'm going to enter from the domed side. And then for this one, on the next strand, I'm going to enter the hole from the concave side, but still put it through that hole that's closest to the edge. And you can see there, it alternates them, it makes them go in these different funky directions, and I want that. That's what I'm going for with these beads. You know, and that's one of the cool things about odd-shaped beads, is that you can like play into their strength if they're just a little funky, if they're just a little weird. I like funky and weird. And see, it makes kind of like an S-curve on it. And so the only thing I'm going to be paying attention to as I continue this is that I want to make sure I go through the right side of my piggy beads for each strand that I'm doing. So this strand, I'm doing it where I went through the domed side, so I'm going to make sure that that strand, I'm going through the domed side again, and again, always through that hole that is closest to the edge. These wouldn't fit properly next to each other between these beads if I went through the center hole on them. And then this side has the hole I entered through the concave side, so we're going to go through it on this one. And this is the only thing that I need to pay attention to with this, is making sure that I've got them going in the direction I decided that I wanted it to go. You could decide it for it to go all in the same direction, and that would be perfect for you. And I applaud you doing things your own way, but I really like the way that these are like just a little bit offset. So this is my pattern for the specialty kit. And I'm going to continue that until I get long enough or until I run out of beads, whichever comes first. Because that can happen. And then here we go with our gemstone orphanage, guys. And for this, I'm not using different types of 2-hole beads. I'm just going to use the same 2-hole beads. And it's just the super duos. So I've got my center part. I'm just going to double check that this is in the center actually. And it's not, it's popping up a little bit, but it's not crimped. And I'm going to start with the two-hole bead like that, going through both holes. And then I'm going to take each end of my wire and I'm going to put it through one hole of 2 super duos and then put both strands through one, but going through separate holes. And it's just going to stack like that all the way along until I get to the end. Let me just do another one for you to give you an idea of what that's going to look like. And like you could do like different colors of super duos. Super duos would make a great go-between between some Tilas or some silkies. Oh, that reminds me. I did something sort of similar with some silky beads and 2-hole lentils in a previous video, and I'll put the link to that video in my description if you want to see that one. But that was a lot of fun. But see how that just snugs right up and it makes kind of a snakeskin, kind of a scale looking thing. And then when we come back the other way, I'm just going to be popping these in between my sticky outy bits and it's going to look amazing. So I'm going to be stacking these guys all the way along until A, I get to the length I want, or B, I run out of my super duos. So that's how I get started on this one. All right, and then for the one with the Beads to Live By subscription, which my March subscription is on its way to my house. It hasn't got here yet. This is still the February subscription, and I've had a lot of fun making with that. Y'all saw my bracelet that I did before. I'll put the link to that video, the one with the ginkgos. That was a lot of fun to make with. I'll put the link to that in there in case you missed it. All right, so for this one, I'm going to be using these Rula beads, and it's Rula, not Rolla, U, not O. And let's just start with one on each strand. And then I'm going to put both strands through the holes of the pyramid bead. One strand per hole. And because the pyramid beads are a shaped bead that have like a wrong side and a right side, what I'm going to want to pay attention to when I'm doing this is which side of the pyramid bead I'm putting my wires through. So I'm going to do another set of rulas. That on here. All right, and so I've got the wires coming in this direction and I've got my point up like this. So when I grab my next pyramid bead, I'm going to want to put the wires in over here. If the wires are going from left to right, I'm going to want to have the wires go from left to right still. That way I won't have a bracelet where I've got like a pokey-uppy one and then a flat one and then a pokey-uppy one and then a flat one. Although that would be pretty cool actually. You can, because they're about the same size, alternate pyramid beads with tilas because they're about the same size and shape. And I've done that actually in one of my designs. But see, you've got your pokey-outy bits with your 2-hole bead, and then you've got your larger one in the middle. And we'll be filling those in later, but that's my repeat for this one. All right, and now we've got our special case. This one is the one that's a little more complicated. And because I am limited on these funky guys and their super smooth brethrens, I am going to be doing a couple of repeats of just some different stylings of beads until we get up there to the top. So for this, I am going to start with one of these 2-hole beads, these kind of half moon guys. And again, because there's like a rounded side and it's a flat side, you just want to make sure you're going in the same direction so they lay the same way on the bracelet. Let me make sure we're going to be in the center. Usually don't have to do this after the first bead or two. Okay, so that's my little platform that I'm going to build from right here. And on one strand, I'm going to pop a tulip, and I'm going to go from the base of the tulip up through the top. And on the other strand, I'm going to put one of these 3mm fire polish beads and a melon bead. And that 3mm fire polish bead pushes that melon bead up high enough that it can nestle right next to that tulip bead without being awkward or weird about it. It's like a little booster seat for it. And then I'm going to put on another one of these. And again, I'm just making sure that my curve is going to be in the right direction, facing up. So now I've got my curves on the right side. And I'm going to, on the other strand that I had the tulip, I had the tulip on this strand down here, if this is the top and the bottom strand. I'm going to put the tulip on the top strand this time, facing the same direction. And grab one of these 3mm and one of these melon beads. And then I'm going to close this off, just a little end cap for this building up section. This is building up from the clasps towards where the main focal part of this bracelet will be. I'm going to close that up with making sure that we're going in the right holes, top and bottom. I'm going to close that up with another one of these roundy guys, half round. There you go. Like that. So now that I've done that, now that I've got enough space between here and there, and I've played around with this beforehand, if you run out of beads and you need to add extra, you could do like an asymmetrical bracelet. That's the first time I tried doing this one. I did that, and I wasn't as happy with it as I think I'm going to be with it like this. So you are always allowed to change your mind. All right, now this is going to end up, going out a little bit, but first it's going to go straight across. It's just on the way back that it's going to go out a little bit. I want to start us off with some of these 4mm fire polish beads, because the holes on these, they go through like some of the arms. So then you've got this point, and this point is going to be in the way and make it difficult for these 2-hole beads to nestle right there like that. Now I could do like stack 3 of these in between them. That would work just as well. But instead of that, I'm going to put one of these 4mm fire polish beads on here like that. And then it's just, is that going to be too long? How did I have it before? One of each of these, and I want to make sure that it's through the right hole and going the right way so that they sit, again, with the curved side up on this side of my bracelet. So I'm going to have that go through this end. These will flip around while you're doing it. That's fine, because they'll get more stability. They won't be all flippity floppity once we add our second pass of wire going through there. All right. That's good. Because this is going to have some wires that go from here to there. So it's going to make kind of a Y or V shape when we get there, but you'll see that later. Okay, now this is the pattern that I'm going to be using. I'm going to put one of the 4mm fire polish beads. You could use any 4mm beads for this that would fit with this, or you could, stack some seed beads or something else just to give you that space between this one and the other. I mentioned already that I did like silkies and 2-hole lentil beads, and I had to fill some of that space between the silkies and the 2-hole lentils with some other beads, and so that would give you another direction for how to fill that space. There we go. See, that's going to nestle nicely in between those. So let's do 2 more fire polish. And then we'll get to the part where you guys can time travel and I will go the slow way to the end of this length. There we go. Again, just making sure that it's going to be gone up the same way. And you can snug up the wires after you get everything on here. It doesn't have to be super tight and right next to each other. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be repeating with the rest of these star beads and some of these guys. And I'm going to be using the 4mm and all of that. And then once I get that length, I'm going to mirror on the other side this part. Going to make my tulips turn the other way, so I'm going through the top and out the bottom instead of through the bottom and out the top when I'm stringing them. That way they'll be totally mirrored when we get to that part. But yeah, so that's how I'm going to be doing it for the dollar bead box bracelet that I'm doing. And I will meet you back here after we get to the end and we're ready to turn everything around and go back the other way. All right, so we have all of our initial stringing done. We've gone in one direction, and now we need to turn around so we can move back down our bracelet and add some more beads to it. But we need to make sure that we've got our closure stuff all taken care of. Now, since this one and this one are going to be done exactly the same way, I went ahead and finished this end already for my soft flex one. It's a little bit shorter because that's all of my piggy beads than some of the others, but I'm going to be adding like a little bit of extender chain or just some extra the thingies, jump rings, in order to have this toggle bar attached to the other end of this. So I'm just leaving this here for now, and we'll attach that at the end of this entire process. And I'm going to be doing the same thing over here. I'm going to make myself a little loop that I can attach a jump ring to, and then this toggle bar for this one. So we'll do that one together. And then for this, on the button closure, I made a little loop with some 8/0 seed beads and the these one that goes around my button. And I will show you how to do that with this one, because we're going to do the same thing. We're using a button, so I'm going to make a little loop with some 8/0 seed beads. Now these 8/0 seed beads did not come in that bead box, but I am adding them to it because we've got a little pearl right here on this this button that came in the box, and we also have some pearls that they're larger that came in the box. And so I'm going to be adding these just to tie everything together to make sure that this can be worn with the other things that I'm going to be making from this. Just, you know, cohesiveness. We're going to keep it all together. So let me show you how we do a little loop for buttons using these seed beads to kind of protect the wire. And I have had questions asked why you would use seed beads versus just the bare wire. And usually for the soft flex wire or something like that, I'll go ahead and leave it bare for a lot of, like, where's one that I did recently? Oh, this one. Actually, I left bare wire for this one because the color is cool, it works with it, and I don't really need to protect the wire from the repeated use of doing this, because this is really tough wire. So it can handle that. This is thinner wire, but also, since I'm going to be doing 2 loops, because it's going to double back on itself like this, I want the seed beads to hold the wire together. So I don't have like 2 loops going crazy everywhere every time I'm trying to button up my bracelet. So the beads will help hold it together. They'll add a touch of decoration, and they'll help protect the wire from abrasion as you're sliding the loop over the button or not. So what we're going to do first is, now that I've got my beads out and I've explained things, we're going to grab a crimp tube and slide it on both of these wires and push it down. It doesn't need to be all the way down at the very end. You can have some room, give yourself some grace areas here, because we're going to be tightening things up later, and we're going to want some room for maneuvering some of our beads around here anyway. And now I'm going to grab some of these 8/0 seed beads. Now this wire will fit twice through an 11/0 seed bead. The medium wire will not, but this wire will. It's just a lot of futzing with it to get it to work, and I didn't feel like doing that, so I said, you know what, I have these 11/0 seed beads, and I'm going to actually be using these 11/0 seed beads for the side of the design, because there are so many of these super duos that I need to fit a bead between on our way back down, and I don't have enough of these. I need about 70 of these beads, and I've only got about 60. So what we're going to do is supplement with some of these pearly looking 8/0 seed beads, because they're about the same size as those. We'll just alternate. We'll do one carnelian, one pearl, and, well, it's not really pearl, it's an 8/0. But that'll again tie that pearlescent bit into this design a little bit more. So, you know, it's a design choice, but also it solves a problem. All right, so I've got some beads on here, and in order to see if it fits, I'm going to go ahead and pinch this wire here, bend this other wire down here where I've got it pinched, and just tighten it up a little bit. And I'm pinching this and holding onto it while I check to see if this button will go through, and it goes through really, really easily. So I could probably remove a couple of these beads from here and see if it still fits. This is how you find out if your beaded loop will fit around your button is by trial and error. A lot of the things that I do are by trial and error. And because, you know, buttons are going to be different sizes, I'm not giving you an exact number of buttons that you would use. This is how you find out for you what's going to work for the button that you're using. And I think I'm going to take just one more off. It's entirely possible that it will end up being too tight with this, but let's try it. All right, that works. Don't go breaking my heart. All right, so now that I've got these strung on one strand of wire, I'm going to take my second empty strand of wire over here, and I'm going to go back through all of these seed beads in the opposite direction. So this one was coming out of it, and this one's going to go back down into it. And again, this is one of the reasons why it's possible and it's doable with 11 O's, but you kind of have to force it a little bit through, and it's just so much easier. They slide so much better with these. All right, now that I've got these going through all of these seed beads in opposite directions, I'm going to take both ends of this and put them through this crimp tube. They can go together or separately. There's going to be plenty of room in a 2x2 crimp tube for all of these. Bits of wire. It's one of the reasons why I decided to choose the fine wire as opposed to the medium, so that I could do things like this. All right. So again, I want to leave a little bit of room between the crimp tube and these other beads, because this wire is going to need to move over to the sides when I start going down the row with it. So let me crimp this using my magical crimper. Again, I'm going to squeeze the crimp right there in the concavity, rotate it for a different angle, and just keep rotating it and then squeezing, and then rotate and then squeeze in order for it to smooth down all those rough ends and leave me with a nice crimp bead. All right, so that one is done. I've got my little closure and it's turned around and it's ready for me to go back down this bracelet the other way, adding some more beads. Now let's do this one, because this is the one where I just want to make a little loop on the end like this to attach a jump ring to. Now I could make a little loop the same way I did this one, so it's like a loop loop, but I think I want, because these wires need to be going through these holes anyway, I'm just going to do it exactly the same way I did this one. And I think I'm using copper crimp tubes for this one. Let me grab this. Why do you like this? All right. So copper crimp tubes for this, I'm going to put one crimp tube on each wire instead of putting both wires through a single crimp tube. I'm going to use two of them. So I have one crimp tube on each wire. Move this guy out of the way a little bit. And then I'm going to bend, let's say, my bottom wire around and put it through the top crimp tube. And it's okay if it goes through that bead next to it, because we're going to be feeding this wire through most of these beads until we get to here anyway. That's why I saved this one for the last, so that we can do a little bit extra. Now, I did not feed the wire through the beads on this one. This is my special case. This one is a special snowflake. So it will have different treatment than the others. And again, I'm just feeding this wire through these beads, and that's another reason why I chose the fine wire, was because this wire will fit through all of these beads twice until it's coming out of this 1/2, this semicircle bead, right before my 2-hole bead extravaganza over here. And that's just one side of this. And I'm not clamping down on the crimps until I get all of this strung through. I'm going to wait a little bit for that. Oop. And that is, hold on. There you go. I'm just tightening up some of my wire a little bit prior to finishing this, so that we don't have a super wonky bracelet. A little bit of space is going to be fine, but not too much space. All right, so I've got this one that went up this side, around and down the other, and I have it coming out of this one here. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. I'm going around this loop into this crimp tube, and then I'm going to go just follow this the path of this other wire through all of these beads until I get to that same place on the other side. And I might have to do a couple of these beads at a time and not all of them at once, and that is okay, because I'm going to have to do them a couple at a time when we get down here, because I'm not going to have all the room for maneuvering that I have up here. That part's going to be real fun. Wait till we get to do that together. Again, this is my special case, and it's only because I didn't have enough of these beads to do this. But you know what? If you don't have enough beads, you can do extra things like this. I need you to behave and go through this check glass tulip for me, please. All the way through, baby. All the way through. Can you do that? Oh, there you go. That is a good wire. All right, so this has gone through here. This last one here. I don't want to go through that fire polish bead on the other side. I want them to be coming out right there, because we're going to go around that fire polish bead to this side. We're going to be loading some other beads in there with it. Right. Now, let's try and tighten some of this stuff up. Okay. All right, so now that that is tightened up there on that side and that side, let's pull these wires down here. All right, there's a teensy little spot right there, but I am going to need a little more room than that because I need enough space to be able to stick my my crimpers in here. So I'm just pulling the wire out a little bit more so that there's enough room in here for me to crimp. There we go. That's good. I pulled it a little too taut. And all that's going to happen with this little loop is where my come on, buddy. That's where my I'm losing the will to live. No, I'm losing my train of thought. That is where my thing, the crimp, no. Jump ring. That's where my jump ring is going to go that attaches this to there. I could have just attached this to there directly, but I like for there to be a little bit more, a smaller thing next to a toggle clasp so it has enough movement to be able to articulate well. And this is actually having a little difficulty. Because it's not, there is not enough room for all of that. And also, I think I might need to stuff this with some extra wire. For more meat for the ravioli. This is only 2. So I just stuffed some of my medium wire. It's just wire that's on the end of this one. I'll cut it off after I've crimped this. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to do the same on this side. So I'm just gonna tread around this as much as I can. Did I break it? No, I did not, but and it crimped. All right, I'm happy with that. Whew, all right, that was a little harder than it needed to be. All right, so let's go up down this list and we will do our filling in our bits part of this, where we are going back down through here and we're going to fill in the spaces between our pokey outy sides. I want some beads between this one and that one, so I'm just going to grab one of these 11-0s, 2 3mm fire polish beads, and an 11-0, and all of these came in either the bead box or the bead bag. Okay, and that is too many beads. You can tell it's too many because it overshoots that hole. So I'm going to take off that extra 11-0. I'm going to take off both 11-0s actually, and just do the 3mm, or might be that both 11/0 and 3mm. This is the fun part. All right, 1 3mm, okay, and 2 11/0. Let's do that one. 1, 2, 3. I can just leave the wire bare, but I like having a little space. See how that works? That's right where I want it to go. So now that I know it will fit there, I can pull that down and do the same thing on the other side. Actually, I think that wire is in the wrong place for this. There we go. That's going to be good. Same thing, an 11/0, the 3mm, and an 11/0. All right, now figuring out how to fill this space. This is kind of a wider space, so it was a bit more of a challenge than some of the others were for figuring out what's going to go between them. At first, I thought I wanted 2 4mm fire polish beads and one of these clear drucks that came in the bead box, but let me show you what happens when I do just those 3. Oh wait, how come it fits now? It didn't fit before. Before it was like not enough space between them. But now it's perfect. You know what? I'm not going to complain about it. Sometimes the beads that fit in one situation, when you do it the next time, they don't fit, even though these are the same beads. But yeah, see how that fits right there between them? That's what I want. And so I'm going to do that and repeat it all the way down this side and all the way down that side. Do my second one. I thought I was going to have to use these 11/0s because that's a good way to fill in the gaps. If there wasn't enough space, or if there was too much space for the 3 4mm, but it was not enough space for 4 4mm, I could pad the sides with some 11/0s so that it fits better. But these actually fit perfectly. And I'm going to just leave that the way it is and keep it going all the way down. The rest of this, actually, do I have the other ones? I need to find my other beads because I'm about to run out of 4mm fire polish beads. All right. That's okay, because I will be doing the rest of this on my own, and I will come back to you when we get to the end so we can finish it up. All right. So I'm going to go all the way down this side, filling in these gaps, all of these gaps between them. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And once I'm done filling in these gaps, I'm going to mirror this little bridge down here. I'm going to go through all of these. So I'm going to accomplish that before I come back to y'all. But before I do that, let's move on to the second bracelet. All right. And I'm just going to pick up one of these 8/0s, one of these carnelians, in order to bridge this gap between where the clasp is and the end of this super duo. Told you we wanted to have a little bit of room there. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. You might have to give it a little tug for it to fall into place. And once it does, then you can keep going down this list. Now I've got a carnelian on this end, so my next bead will be one of these 8-ohs. Then I go through the super duo and it pops right into place. And then my next bead will be a carnelian round. And I go through that super duo. And that just pops right into place. And see how that fills those gaps in? And then the next one will be an 8-oh. And the next will be carnelian. I'm going to continue this all the way down to the end, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. And I think I want to make sure that my sides match. You could do them with alternating sides if you wanted. I'm sure that might look cool. So we're going to do that down both sides. And then for this one, let's separate these guys out because they got a little bit tangled up while I was doing things. All right, for this one, I've got my 8-ohs and 6-ohs that came in the bead subscription. And for this, I'm just going to why are you like this? These wires are being in awkward places. Okay, that's a much less awkward starting point. And I'm just going to pop one of these 8-ohs into this little spot here between the clasp and this first rulla, like that. Let's do it on the other side too. And then between each of the rulla beads, I'm going to pick up an 8-oh, a 6-oh, and an 8-oh. Just like that. I'll do it all the way down the side. Just have it go right here into that second hole on the pokey outy bit of that second 2-hole bead. I'm going to do this all the way down on each side until I get to the end. So it's fairly simple. It's a little more complicated than just basic stringing, but it's like the next step up from basic stringing. Because you're still going in a single direction, you're not switching lanes. The only time you switch sides is when you go make your loop up here at the top. And you still go straight shot up and straight shot back. That's what that's going to look like when it is done. And then for this one, again, I tried to get these to fit in between them, and they just don't. They're just a little bit too big. So it was like pushing them out of the way. But these Rolla beads, Rolla, R-O, fit just fine. And I'm going to pop one of these onto each of these strands and put them through that second hole on the piggy beads on each side. So this one goes into this one. And then this one goes into this one. And because of the way I've offset my piggy beads, these are not going to be directly across from each other. They'll all be a little bit skewed, which is cool and what I wanted. All right, so into the piggy bead. See how nicely it fits right in there? So for these, you can do them both at the same time, or you could do just one side and then go back and do the other side. It's all dependent on you, on how you want to pursue this. So I'm going to finish these up. I'm going to string all of my little beads into my empty spaces, and when we get to the end, we'll finish up our bracelets, and we'll do that together. All right, so we are pretty much done. I went ahead and finished these two. This was the Gemstone Orphanage box, one that I used super duos as both my middle beads and my outside beads. And then I filled in my gaps using these carnelian beads and these, let me actually give you the correct name for this. It's opaque lustered light beige Tohos, round 8-0. And so I alternated those, and I love the way this looks. I am really, really pleased with it. And then this was the one that I used, the dollar bead bag and dollar bead box. And you can see here where I've got the sides filled in with those Drucks and these fire polish beads. I actually made a change from what I was doing earlier because I actually did not have enough of these fire polish beads to do fire polish, Druck, fire polish between them. So I swapped them around, and it's Druck, fire polish, Druck. So that was a change that I made, but otherwise it is exactly how I planned it. And I finished these the exact same way that I'm going to be finishing this one. So I'm only going to be doing one of them with you. And then this one, because it's a little bit different, because I'm using the thicker wire, I'm going to do that one with you as well. So let me do the first one, because this is how I finished these other two when I got to the end of it. And this does not like to lay flat. It likes to be in a curve. And you know what? I'm not going to force it to be something that it's not. No, it's not happy. I'm not happy. I'm going to let it be who it is. And it can be a curvy bracelet. And that's what's going to happen with this guy. I'm just going to let him keep being curved. But anyway, that's why it's all twisted up, is because it does not like to be flat. And that's okay, because it doesn't have to be. That's the beauty of it being a bracelet. All right, so here we are. I've got my 2 strands of wire, and I should actually hold this in front of the camera. I've got my 2 strands of wire, and my uncrimped crimp tube right there next to my button. So I'm going to take both of these strands of wire and I'm going to put them through this crimp tube, either together or separately. Sometimes it works better together and sometimes it works better separately. But either way, I want to get these through here. Why are you... what are you doing? The end of that is coming out of there weird. You know what? Why don't I pull it out and then I can put it back through here. There we go. That way it'll be coming out a side, whether it's the correct side or not. Who knows? What are we doing, guys? All right. Bending these up so that they cup the pyramid beads helps it keep that that curvy shape. That's why I was doing that. All right. And now that that is in there, I just had to readjust the rest of the bracelet to make sure that the wire wasn't pulling too tautly anywhere. And now I can crimp. And this is another reason why I chose these smaller wires, is so that I could get 4 wires through the same crimp tube. All right, now I've got some excess wire to get rid of. All right, because I cannot get the medium soft flex 4 times through one of these crimp tubes. And that's why this next one is just a little bit different. There you go. Get that dimensionality. Isn't that cool? Sort of love it. All right, so I've got those 3. And this one was the one that, remember, I had put these crimp tubes on here. And something I wasn't thinking of when I did that is that I would need to be able to get my magical crimper around these crimps, and I cannot do that. So I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to do a flat crimp on these, but not yet. First, I'm going to grab a couple of these guys, just so that I've got something filling that space between the bottom of this and that crimp tube there. Go up through the crimp tube. All right. And sometimes you got to give it a little tug so they snap into place. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I think there's another crimp in the way when I'm trying to get this through there. There we go. It's poking through. There it goes. Hold on. Whew, this is real tight. I don't think these are gonna go anywhere. All right, so I'm gonna be flat crimping this. I'm going to flat crimp both of them at the same time so that they are the exact same angle. I'm just going to go on that side and that side, and now that that is crimped and these are there where they need to be, also it is flat here so it won't be digging into the skin with those edges. You do what you got to do, guys. Cut off my excess. And I can attach my toggle bar to the other side. Remember, this is a little bit shorter than some of the other bracelets, so I need to make up some of that distance with some chain. So I thought I would start with 3 links. And it's just some jump rings that I'm using as my links. I'm going to connect 3 of them here to this loop on this side. And I just connected this one with a jump ring too, by the way, right there in that loop. That worked out great. So let's get this guy open. Swing open the jump ring, put it through that loop, and attach the other jump rings and toggle. Close that up, and let's see if this will fit around my wrist now. It is a little bit too short, so I'm going to add, let's try 3 more jump rings. Okay, that one's going to need to be flat. So I'm going to open up this jump ring. Add another jump ring. Close this one. So that's 4 of them. I could use a chain instead. Actually, let's close this all together. So that's 5. Now 6. We'll see if that is long enough. These are just, it's a little hack you can do if you didn't have enough beads to do a long bracelet for your entire wrist. You can either extend it like this, or add more beads to the sides like this, or do an asymmetrical bracelet where only half of it is done with these. Ooh, I think I did it. You know what? I think one more jump ring is going to be enough to close that gap, because it is almost enough. toggle bracelets are difficult to close, even when they fit right. Come here, friend. Yeah, it's really snug, so I am going to add one more jump ring. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more. All right. There we go. And that's going to be long enough. But look how structural these are. I kind of love that about it. So we've got 4 different, well, 5 if you include my one that I made from my bead stash ones as my example. But yeah, we've got all of these different bracelets were made using the same type, the same structure with 2-hole beads, where you had your central 2-hole beads and then your 2-hole beads on the sides. And then you just filled in the gaps when you go down the other way. Anyway, which one of these is your favorite? I mean, I am super fond of this one, but then this is also like, they're like all of the different parts of my personality right here. with all of these. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you made along with me, I hope you enjoyed making along with me. And until next time, happy beading!